As I get started on part 2 of my Tamiya Cascadia build, I want to talk a little about Tamiya's multifunction control unit, sound system lights. I'm going to be installing this as I go, so I want to talk a little bit about it now, and I'll kind of show you as I go along what functions it does, how I install it. The main thing is it also provides speed control functions, so we don't need a separate speed control. I'm going to quickly look at the parts here. It's the main control board, switchboard, speaker for the sound, vibration motor. You start it up, the truck vibrates. That's very, very cool. Lights, and then various plastic parts, mounting pieces. There's some pieces that replace truck parts in certain cases that might differ. Same thing here. A lot of these parts, remember the sound system is designed to fit many, many trucks. So a lot of the parts the Evolution won't use. Very nice manual. It's complicated. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use a computer radio, a Turnigy TGY i6, which I've done another video on how to modify the sticks so they self-center on the left side, so you can use it for a throttle and use the 3-position switch for the transmission. So I'll go through the programming, how this all fits together, but just be aware, I might mention it off and on through the next couple of videos of how this goes, but it is an option. It's very cool, and then we'll get to see how it works when we're all done. Now I'm going to get ready to start part 2 of my build. Alright, for the transmission, that's parts bag D. I have already assembled a Tamiya transmission and done a video on building it, a complete, like a half-an-hour video. So I'm really not going to show you the assembly of this. You can go check out the other video. The only thing I really wanted to show is that I decided to paint the transmission housings in the body color. They turned out just beautiful. Honestly, I don't know why I decided to do this. I just thought it would be an extra nice touch, and I'm glad I did because they look really great. I'll put this together and put a couple pictures on. Okay, got my transmission all finished. 2 coats of the racing blue, 2 coats of clear. Turned out really, really nice. I've never really painted a Tamiya transmission before, but I'm going to continue to do it. I think it's a great way to test the paint color for one thing, and it looks really nice. So it's ready to install. We'll go ahead and get that put into our chassis. First thing I'm going to do is install my transmission. I like to run the wires down underneath this girder and then just wiggle the transmission into place. You've got to do a couple wiggles here, get it to drop in. Then we're going to grease up these ends of the drive shaft. And I'm just going to put one screw in it temporarily to hold it. I'll come back later and install the other screws and Loctite them. Once the transmission's all mounted, we start putting these fuel tanks on. A screw here and a couple of screws go up through the bottom into the frame rails. Let's see if I can get this screw here in. Then I'm going to take that all the way here. Okay, off camera I'm going to put those screws up from the bottom. We also have a top that goes on here, and that is going to be this one. Couple little details. One, when you cut it off the sprue, it leaves a mark, and I just have not found any way to deal with this other than clean it off. You can see how this mounts on here with screws, and then go back and touch it up later with a little bit of Tamiya aluminum paint, and that seems to work pretty good. So I'm going to get this put together. We'll come back and take a look at the other side, which is different. Because we're using the Tamiya multifunction system, a couple of these operations are different than the manual. First thing we're going to do is the control board comes out of this assembly. So we just need to take it apart. Looks like that. Then we have to take it off of case. I'm really enjoying building this truck. Tamiya kits are so fun to work with. Everything fits. Okay, that comes off of there, and what we're going to do is mount it inside the tank, and it'll be coming out the bottom. Tamiya has provided a sticker in the MFCO kit that fits down here. So we'll drop this in. And it'll look like that. We're going to use the same screws that came out of it to reinstall it. And we'll put this together. Got the circuit board mounted here in the fuel tank. You can see the bottom of it with the decal. So now there's some little extender cables here that mount a 3-pin, there's a 5-pin and a 7-pin. And they just route out the back here. There's a notch in the tank. So it just goes together like this. A couple screws in the bottom. And then we'll mount it on our truck. Leave the wires up on top. And then we'll be ready to move on to the next step. Obviously, if you don't have the sound system, you wouldn't have these wires, but it mounts the same way. The final step on the tanks is to add this little end cap. and you just use some double sticky tape that Tamiya provides in the kit. To stick them on. Takes two little pieces, just at kitty corners. There's a little notch here on one side, and that faces in. Those just push into place. Our tanks are complete. The last step in the E-bag is this little coupler release plate. It has a bushing, nothing exciting, I just put it together. One thing I would note though is that Tamiya does offer optional motorized support legs, and if you do that, this plate comes out and you install the servo mount instead. I'm not going to install those on this truck. It's very easy to pop that plate off and add these later, but it is available. I just don't know what trailer I'm going to use with it. And that's just held on by a couple of screws. And then we will move on to bag F, where I will start installing some of the lights that work with the MF-01. This is a whole lot more interesting stuff than building the chassis was. Alrighty. As I get ready to put the rear bumper assembly together, you can see I bolted these mud flaps up. Nothing special to see here except that you want to make a right and a left. What is important are these little clear parts. I've got a couple of red lenses that fit in here. And Tamiya recommends, when you read the instructions, they'll say something like rubber cement. I use micro crystal clear, which I've used for a long time. It works great on plastic models for doing clear parts and canopies. You can also use Pacer canopy glue. What you don't want to do is use like a CA glue, a super glue, or a plastic model cement, because it eats the clear plastic parts. These have a front and a back. The back is smooth and it sits in here and it really presses in hard. There's little tabs on the side that lock it in, so you want to get it pushed in all the way. I'm doing this now so this part can dry. And this crystal clear dries crystal clear, so even if I smear a little around the edges, it won't show. Alright, we'll let that dry as I get these lights out and get ready to put this together. Before we can install anything, we need to tag them with these little tags. In the MFC instructions, there's a list of what tags go on what wires, and the wires are all color-coded. So, for example, J13 headlight is white and black. J14 headlight is white and black. You can see I put the 13 tag on. They go close to the connector. So these just go around each wire, and it's a good idea to just label all the wires at once, so when you need them, you're ready to go. So I'm going to label all these up and then we'll install a couple. I've got all my lights labeled now with the little tags, and I'm going to assemble the rear bumper. You can see I've installed the light lenses, all using the crystal clear. So this actually is a pretty simple step. This little plate, you just slide the wires through the notch and then pull the light back in, and they install then in that. See what the light looks like. And then once all the lights are in, this whole assembly just drops into here. On the mud flaps, this little side piece fits over here. Mud flap drops on, and then we'll have a complete assembly. So I'm going to put that all together. We'll come back and install it. Got that all assembled. You see all the lights in there, mud flaps on, everything is labeled. This assembly just slides in. Typical Tamiya process. We use 4 screws back here to hold it on. I'll just throw one of those in there loosely. Okay, there's our chassis. This will be the end of part 2, and part 3 we'll come back and we'll install some of the rear decking, probably the center area, and get to work on the MFC01, get it up and running and get some programming done. Alright, so stay tuned for part 3. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to my channel.